I'd like to welcome you today. Today's guests are John Copeland and Sean Bresnan from Wealth Partners Capital Group, and Mark Gelbach and myself from True North Advisors. We've recently closed a strategic transaction with Wealth Partners. They've taken a minority investment in True North Advisors to help us grow inorganically over the next decade. We're super excited about this partnership and can't wait to get started with them. But today we thought we'd let you hear a little bit about our strategy, our history, and how we plan to go forward together. Sean, John, Mark, welcome, guys. I'm glad we're having the opportunity to sit down and do this. Our goal here today is to really try to educate the RIA marketplace in terms of some of the things that we've learned over time. You guys in your business, Mark and I in our business, and then also we want to share kind of the vision for what we're going to try to do in the future. So before we jump in, Sean, tell us where you're from.
Originally born in Connecticut and raised outside of Philadelphia.
Okay, so how old were you when you moved from Connecticut?
About 6 months old. So okay. my whole life was early part of my life was spent in the Philadelphia region.
Okay, all the way through high school.
All the way through high school. Went to school in Pennsylvania as well. Actually moved down to Florida about 2 years after college, and had been working in Philadelphia for about 2 years, and then had the opportunity to go down to Florida and not long thereafter met John and obviously got into business together, in called the early
fortune.
Yeah.
Where'd you go to college?
Penn State.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a great experience, 4 years up there, majored in finance, minored in economics, and again, went back to Philadelphia after school and spent some time in the asset management industry and worked for a firm that sold to a bank and really got a sense of what it was like working for, a boutique firm, then obviously working for a much larger firm, which, kind of was one of the, one of the things that really, was part of the fundamental building blocks of what we're building here at Wealth Partners.
So do you still have family in Philadelphia?
No, believe it or not, my dad lives about 4 blocks from me in Palm Beach, Florida. So it's one of the great fortunes of my life. We get to see each other every weekend. We had lunch together for a long time every day. And it's just been, the fact that I can walk down the street and spend some time with him is really a terrific gift in my life.
How old's your dad?
76 now.
Okay.
He's a young guy.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
I have an older brother. I've got a brother that lives in Asheville, North Carolina. He lived in Austin, Texas for quite some time. He's an artist, filmmaker. He and his wife and their 3.5-year-old are in Asheville now and really kind of enjoying that lifestyle.
And then, are you married?
I am.
Yeah.
My wife, Cecilia, we've been married for about 5 years. Been together for much longer than that, and she's a wonderful person in my life. She's a nurse practitioner, works for a nephrology practice in the Palm Beach area. Spent a lot of time in the ER and the ICU, especially during COVID, and had the opportunity to join a group that was that allowed her to stay in the hospital, but not necessarily with the hours that she had, working full time for a hospital.
And how'd you guys meet?
It's a funny story. We met, actually, I knew her parents before, she moved into town. She's originally from the Washington, D.C. area. Her parents moved down to Palm Beach, West Palm, probably early 2000s or so. She was living in California. She went to school in Los Angeles, or in college in Los Angeles, and had started as friends for a few years and, spent more and more time together and just, saw the beautiful person that she was. So it's and my good fortune that we're together.
That's great. You guys have kids?
None yet. So,
Okay.
Hopefully at some point, but, we have a 13.5-year-old golden retriever that gets to walk the beach with me every morning, and we have a lot of fun with her.
What was sort of the early stage of being interested in the investment or the advisory business? Or
I think more so from originally from an investment perspective. So I worked for, as I said, a firm in Philadelphia. I was managing about $2 billion. Largely investing in financial services companies. So think, community banks, mid-sized banks, other kind of financial services oriented businesses, both in public and private markets. And then they were acquired by a bank. And so I got a sense of not only the money management side of it, but obviously the M&A and corporate development side of it as this bank was really building out, a wealth management business themselves. Was just always interested in numbers. Had the great fortune of doing some internships in college, one at Brown Brothers, one at Smith Barney. So it was just a situation. I always wanted to get into the investment business, and then over time you kind of have a sense of, do you want to be on the advisory or agency side of the business where you're working with clients, or do you really want to be in the investment side in more of a principal fashion? And which led me to John and our time at AMG.
And when did you join AMG?
That would have been early 2014.
Okay.
So a little, probably 10 years ago now.
Was there something in between the first job in AMG, or did you go straight to it?
Yeah, I worked for a bank in Palm Beach, Florida that had investment management business, it had a wealth management business, it had a private bank, it had an internet bank. And so it was a diversified holding company. And then 2010 or so, it started to sell some of those assets. We sold the wealth management division in 2007 to City National Bank out of Los Angeles. My initial introduction to AMG was, there was a business that we owned called Fortigent, which was a wealth management or institutional asset management platform that AMG had invested in, and sold the private bank to a Spanish bank that had established a big presence in Miami. So still had the opportunity to stay on the kind of the advisory side in both private banking, corporate development, wealth management, but really was focused on, I'd met John at that point and really wanted to go work for him.
You liked him?
I liked him a lot. Yeah.
Took a while.
You didn't know him that well?
I didn't know him that well.
Who was the founder of Fortigent?
It was Steve Lockshin and Andy Putterman were the two main principals. And that business
I remember
was
that
one.
business.
Yeah, it was an interesting business because in its infancy, it was not distributing, but it was providing, investment management and alternative solutions to the broad RIA community. And I think they were early in that aspect of things. And, the business is now part of LPL.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting perspective because you got a sense of how fragmented this industry is. I mean, they had a kind of a calling universe not dissimilar to ours, which is like, this is fertile territory. And whether you're selling the idea of partnership or whether you're selling the idea of a platform, an investment platform, it gave you a sense of how broad this universe and how growing this universe of the RIA community is.
John, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Litchfield, Connecticut.
Okay.
Northwest corner, the other Connecticut, the non-New York Connecticut.
The non-New York Connecticut?
Yeah, 2 hours away, but, a distance, thousands of miles in terms of culture and growing up.
So all the way, born there, all the way through high school?
All the way through high school, went to Georgetown, met my wife at Georgetown, and then postgraduate school, worked as an advisor at Goldman Sachs for a number of years. And actually, my mentor there, a fellow named Dan Stanton, who was one of the early investors in Wealth Partners, which we'll get to in a minute, actually introduced Sean and I.
Okay.
So Dan has been an important force for both of us over the course of the last, in my case, 30 years.
So let's go back to your wife, who you met at Georgetown.
Right.
And what's her name?
Jana.
Okay.
And we have 3 children.
Okay.
And my oldest son, Evander, is 29. He's in the Air Force JAG. And my middle son, Aiden, is 25, graduated from the University of Florida. And my daughter, Ariana, is a junior at Georgetown. And she has not yet met her husband.
Is somebody on the payroll at Wealth Partners?
My daughter-in-law.
Okay.
Great question.
Katie.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so if you say, has someone been on the payroll? The answer is every one of them. But currently on the payroll is my daughter.
That's right. Got it.
And she earns every penny.
So pronounce your wife's name for me again.
Jana.
And how long have you guys been married?
We got married in 1988. So
quick math.
You can do the quick math.
Come on.
36 years. But we actually met in 1981. So she really hates it when I say, it's amazing we've been romantically involved for over almost 45 years. She said, stop saying that to people. They're going to think we're 75 years old. But we got married in 88.
So then, so you went to Georgetown, undergrad in?
English and economics.
So what attracted you to the advisory business?
That's a great question. The answer, Scott, is a couple of things. One is I love the idea of having true independence. I love the idea of working with people very closely, with individuals on something that was important to them. I thought it would be a terrific educational experience. Presuming at some point I had more than a negative net worth, I thought the education could be helpful. And I love the idea of being in a highly entrepreneurial environment. And it was all those things.
And so then you were there 12, 13 years.
Over 13 years. I left to run Credit Suisse's U.S. wealth management business in 2000, which was a relatively short tenure because you may recall the Credit Suisse merged with DLJ, and it became a very different organization. And then subsequent to that, I went with the team that we had assembled to Lehman Brothers.
Okay.
And that's a whole nother experience, Lehman Brothers in 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
Fast forward.
Was that a wealth business
that was
also?
all wealth management.
Okay.
Yeah, all client advisory. Other than my short tenure at Credit Suisse, which was management oriented, everything else was a direct advisory relationship. Subsequent to 2008, 2007, our team left Lehman right before the Lehman implosion, and took our business and our clients to Morgan Stanley, which, if you recall at that time, there were very few clearly stable platforms. You really weren't sure in 2007 which was the next shoe to drop. AIG, people were questioning whether they were going to pay their bonds in Goldman and turn into a bank in order to, it was a very stressful period. But James Gorman, at that point, I think had a very strong view as how Morgan Stanley was going to play out. We joined and were there as a team for the next 3 years until I got a phone call from Sean Healy, who at that time was the CEO of AMG. AMG is a publicly traded asset management business. He was a law school classmate. And he said, we are thinking of investing in wealth management firms, not just asset management firms.
And what year was this? Just
2000. It's late 2010.
Okay.
It was so we launched the AMG Wealth Management Division in 2011. So this was 6 or 8 months prior. And he said, we think you'd be a good person to run this division. The division was 2 of us. But
sounds important.
It sounded important. I bought in. And it turns out one of the catalysts for that call was Dan Stanton, who had been my mentor and boss at Goldman for over a decade. And that job entailed a move to Palm Beach. So our family moved to Palm Beach in 2011. And we were there for 3 or 4 years. I got to know Sean, again through Dan Stanton. And Sean joined, I think, in 2014. And we ran that business for AMG up through 2017. And that business was investing in large wealth management firms using the AMG model. The AMG model was one of one-off investments, usually majority, allowing the firm to continue to be run independently, but really offering no other capability.
So pause there. I want to come back to that because that's really what got you guys started at Wealth Partners Capital Group. So let's come back to that in just a second. Mark.
Scott.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Waco, Texas.
Tell us about your early childhood and your early years.
Well, my father was a professor at Baylor, so Baylor was the thing in Waco. This is before Chip and Joanna, well before. And I think the most prescient memory I have is, how do I get to Dallas? I was interested in a lot of things the city had to offer, and so it was always a highlight of mine when we would go to Dallas to see theater or a sporting event or shop for back to school clothes. Dallas was the place.
Yeah, interesting. And do you have brothers and sisters?
I have a sister. She's 2 years older. She's was a professional triathlete and now is kind of a personal trainer.
And so you have really good genes in your family.
Stubborn genes.
Good longevity genes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you went to Baylor.
Went to Baylor, where I met you.
Yes.
Didn't want to go to Baylor, but I had a faculty scholarship, so I got to study for free, which was great. I met my wife, as you know, Christy, the first week of school, and I met you the first week in school. So all things considered, staying in Waco was a good decision.
Turned out okay.
Turned out pretty okay.
So give us one of your fondest memories from Waco growing up, or from Baylor, going to Baylor.
Well, as you know, we had a pretty unique friendship group through our fraternity. We had a group of guys that decided to defer when they went through rush, because our fraternity got kicked off campus and couldn't take a pledge class, but we all locked arms and decided to defer. And that was a pretty important decision because everybody wants to get into the Greek life and start your social life aspect of Baylor. But that made a big impression on me. And then, as you know, our fraternity pledge class was filled with a lot of really diverse, interesting people. So I would say fraternity life was definitely the highlight for me at Baylor. But the other thing I would say is I'm a learner by nature. It strikes me as I listen to John and Sean that there's a lot of similarities. My parents were educators, so they wanted me to have a liberal arts degree. They thought if I could communicate, think critically, write, that was the most important thing. So I actually was headed to become a lawyer, had applied to Baylor Law School. I took the LSAT, but I also was just a learner by nature. So I took finance, accounting, economics, that had nothing to do with my major. I like to learn. I ended up going to DC. I'd been a congressional intern, and I went up to DC during the first Bush administration when there were a lot of Texans there, and that was a lot of fun. But I worked for Debevoise and Plimpton, which is a big New York-based white shoes law firm, and had a blast. Except I learned that I didn't want to go to law school, and that was
good call.
That was one of the. I didn't have 2 years of law school underneath. Didn't know what I wanted to do, but again, being very similar, I knew I wanted to work for myself. I don't know what that says about me with authority, but kind of took an inventory of what I like to do, which is I wanted to work for myself, start a business. I had been an investor in childhood. The first stock I ever bought was when I was 7 years old. It was FedEx. And I can remember watching the ticker number on the newspaper, and it didn't move. This was in the mid to late 70s. So that was a pretty horrific market, but, it just always been interested in that. And then like you thought, hey, what's the worst thing? I'm going to learn, I'm going to meet interesting people. And this will be a new experience. So I know you haven't asked this question yet. You may be getting there, but I had the good fortune of working at Smith Barney back in the early mid-'90s. Smith Barney really had an entrepreneurial culture, unlike a lot of the other competitors who I will not name. They let you slit your own throat, which was great. I mean, in other words, they didn't dictate how you were going to make your numbers. It was just make your numbers, right? And I think I've shared this before, but Smith Barney started the fee-based asset management business using third-party managers, charging a fee, being a fiduciary, and that really appealed to me rather than having a transactional relationship with clients.
What year was that?
This was probably 94.
Yeah.
And just it was a unique and wonderful environment where they were doing something that was not being done. And as a junior broker, I mean, I think they called us financial consultants at that point in time. You had to make your numbers, and charging 1% where you got paid on a quarterly basis, as you can imagine, you'll remember, it was hard to do. It was hard to make your numbers, but I did it. And, I look back and think I didn't make a lot of conscious decisions. I kind of looked at the gray area with curiosity and entered in. And so it's been wonderful.
Tell us a little bit about your family.
So my wife, I've known a long time. As I said, 39 years ago we met. We've only been married 20 years ago. So everybody always says, what's your problem with commitment? But she's lovely. She also worked in DC for a lot longer than I did. She's, as you know, got a lovely spirit, a lot of intellect, a lot of care, a lot of energy. She's competitive. So we have fun together. We were really good friends all through college and in DC. And then I like to say that she followed me from DC down to San Antonio and then up to Dallas. She doesn't like that, but the romantic aspect of our relationship kind of came to the fore in 2000. and then she got transferred away. She was working for Southwestern Bell, which is now AT&T, doing M&A work and regulatory affairs. Got transferred to Chicago. But what I would say is we've known each other a long time. We have a solid foundation of friendship. And then the romance happened, and so it's a beautiful marriage. He keeps me on the straight and narrow for sure. And then I have a 20-year-old son who's a sophomore at the University of Oregon. So a long way away. I like to say, are you
Almost as far away as he could go.
Yeah. Are you trying to send me a message about my parenting and our relationship? So unlike you, he and your father, he decided to go far away. But he's a lovely young man. He's very intrepid, likes to also enter into uncharted territory and make it work. And I'm extremely proud of him. He's a global traveler. He's 20 years old, and I think he's been to 19 countries, some of which on his own.
Yeah, I was going to say a couple on his own.
Yeah, so he's a diehard sports fan. Primarily Premier League and Mujish League, but he's also a big F1 fan. So it's fun for us. We get to go travel and see some unique sites in different countries.
You guys went to an F1 race together last summer?
Spa, Belgium.
Yeah.
So we've been to several together,
Yeah.
but we got to go to the Ardennes Forest to Spa, which is one of the storied sites, one of the original sites of F1. Got to camp out with a lot of Belgians and Dutch Max Verstappen fans in a tent, and it rained and was hot. And
Mark's son's name is Grant, and Grant said he looked at Mark in the tent one night and he said, "Dad," he goes, "I think this is a trip that I would take with my buddies, not with my dad."
Of course, his buddies couldn't write the check for the tickets. So. But he is a lovely young man. I'm extremely proud of him. So,
John, Sean, you guys, I mean, we're all just getting to know each other. Any questions or curiosities for Mark?
I'm curious to know how the two of you connected. It sounds like you knew each other at school, but how you connected into the True North
Sure, yeah.
business.
Yeah, so Scott and I had the good fortune of meeting Scott. It's amazing, 39 years.
Wow.
I feel very fortunate.
Scott's only 42.
Yeah, right.
How's that happen?
That's crazy.
we were in playgroup together.
Exactly. Crazy.
Yeah, I tell the story that's on another one of our podcasts about when we first met. He intruded on a rush date that I was having. Scott's
Sure to form fast friendships.
Yeah, Scott's like your golden retriever. He's blissfully unaware
Naive.
sometimes, and I tend to have a Machiavellian element to me where everything's planned out and it's very strategic. And he intruded on that. I'm glad you did.
Unbeknownst to me.
Yeah.
Clearly. You're having the time of your life.
I'm just saying hello,
Yeah.
just the golden retriever coming in to say hi to everybody.
Yeah, but we quickly got over that. I would say that
Mark quickly got over that.
Yeah.
You didn't have anything to get over.
So we had a lot of great adventure. We worked together as co-rush chairman. We lived together. When Scott went to New York, I went to D.C. So we were both on the East Coast.
Sounds like that didn't last long for either of you. You couldn't wait to get back
That's
to
true.
Yeah.
Texas.
That's true.
Uniquely related, doing the same type of investment management consulting. He with a big bank, then me with Smith Barney. The guys that had started this practice called the consulting group that did fee-based asset management or wealth management rolled out of Smith Barney, started an independent turnkey asset management platform called Lockwood. His bank decided to get out of the business. They looked for partners. How many people did you interview? 20?
We looked, like 20 or 30 different firms to join when we were leaving Chase. Brokerage firms, banks, CPA firms. And, it was this idea we wanted to be independent. And, you'd be captive in all these other organizations. So we ended up with Lockwood.
Yeah,
after that
and
search.
so it was the guys that I used to work with that were kind of the visionaries at Smith Barney, and then it was Scott. It's kind of like, this is...
Our worlds are
I'm
colliding.
a little slow, but this seems like a good thing. So, and that was, we started working together 26 years ago, and then started True North 24 years ago. So we have the privilege of, I think we spend more time together than we do with our respective families. And it's been great. We both have complementary skill sets and a lot of respect for one another. At least I have for you. I don't know if you have
I
for me.
absolutely have respect for you.
And have a very transparent, vulnerable, authentic relationship. And this is just one big adventure. We're adventure seekers. I drug him up Mount Rainier at one point in time, but that gives you a flavor of the types of things that we like to do together. And it's fun to continually grow professionally, and this is a new step for us, which is terribly exciting for us.
And for us.
But then just live life, getting married, having kids graduate, parents, dealing with all of those. It's a real privilege to live life.
It's easy to look back on success and feel like it was all supposed to happen, but I don't think it's lost, certainly not on Sean and I, how tough it is to start your own business. Just to break away from whatever cocoon or home or ecosystem you're in and say, we're going to do this on our own.
Well, I think about a couple things. One is just the bursting of the tech bubble in 2000, right after we had opened our doors. Didn't quite know what that was going to look like.
Yeah.
And then September 11th happened, and I distinctly remember that.
Right.
And they shut the markets down for a week, and I mean, we didn't know.
Yeah.
Trying to take care of clients and just the different iterations of challenges or opportunities of learning that we've had over the years. Some really hard things.
Yeah, we've gone through some tough things.
And the good news is, I think you are always up for an adventure. Scott's got a very good work ethic, like a lot of capacity to work hard, which I appreciate, and hopefully I have the same. So, and then
There's a little bit of a competition,
for
to
sure,
like
healthy competition
to keep up. It's like
for
he's
sure.
not going to outwork me on this.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
it's good.
Then that's a healthy.
It's a healthy competition. Yeah.
Accountability,
Yeah.
and then yet we both have a very similar worldview. Our faith is really important to us, so we can hold each other accountable, and how that impacts our lives professionally and personally.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about the risk of starting a business, which you guys obviously did as well. And on the one hand, it's kind of like this was just it was just the next step, right? So we'd been in these captive organizations. We went to Lockwood, which was, we were employees, but their intent was to make us independent. And they were just like, you guys come be an employee, incubate your business. We'll give you a fairly aggressive payout, and then build your book, and then go start your own firm was kind of what they wanted to do with us. And so it really just was kind of the next thing, and in 2000 with the two of us and kind of an assistant and an analyst and $100 million in AUM, it was kind of like, maybe it was risky, but it didn't feel risky. Like it just felt like it's what we were supposed to do. And I think because of the way the industry, the conflicts of interest that were so inherent in the industry, it was like, this is how we're going to solve that. And as we talked about this morning earlier, we wanted to build a team, a really unified team, a family. We wanted to build something with scale, and then we wanted to eliminate all the conflicts of interest that were so prevalent in the industry, and truly act as a fiduciary on behalf of our clients. So it just sort of felt like it was the next thing. And if we'd had $1 billion and we were trying to go roll out of, a big bank or a big captive environment, that to me feels like a lot of risk. We were just, it was sort of this incremental next step at the time.
Well, and it's been fun too.
Yeah.
Like the adventure of learning new things, or, trying to figure stuff out. That's really kind of in our DNA, a growth mindset from just curiosity and maybe a little obstinance and stubbornness as well, but trying to do the right thing and recognizing a need in the marketplace. Or, one of you said it, what would I want? Like, we've built True North really to reflect what we want now, right? Hoping that there are other business owners out there that would appreciate the same approach. So that's been a constant thing. Scott, tell us a little bit about you.
So, sure. I grew up here in Dallas, in Richardson, which if you know much about Dallas really, for the most part, has grown north for all these years. And now it's beginning to grow in all different directions because we just, it's a thriving, growing city. But Richardson at the time was sort of the edge of the frontier. Like, so 2 streets over from our development where we lived was just cattle fields and, farms and some family, some development, but it was all beginning to just move north. So I was sort of on the edge of the Metroplex at that point in time. We had moved a couple times. I went to high school in Richardson and then graduated and went to Baylor. And that was, 1985, where I met Mark. And then I also met my wife at Baylor. We didn't date at Baylor. We started dating a few years later, but first met her there. I have one brother who's here in Dallas. My father lives here in Dallas. He actually lives just outside of Dallas. Alicia and I have been married for 28, going on 29 years in April. So
congratulations.
Yeah,
that's great.
We've been together, dating, if you wrap it all together, a little over 30 years. So kind of crazy when you start to look back at all that time. I have 3 girls, 23, almost 23. So Laurel is a first-year law student at Pepperdine, and a reluctant first-year law student, I might add. And then Chloe is a sophomore at OU, and then Helena is a sophomore at Highland Park High School. So still got one at home.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Scott, because I know you so well, you've always kind of had an entrepreneurial bent, and certainly your dad had his own business, but talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Both my mom and my dad had businesses, their own business. My dad was maybe a little less entrepreneurial. I mean, he came by it. So my dad's father was an entrepreneur, had his own business. But we really just have always, no one in my family was a professional per se. Like, no one was a lawyer, no one was a doctor, no one was a corporate person. Everyone just was sort of entrepreneurial in their endeavors. I guess my mom's father worked for Texas Oil and Gas, which was a big oil and gas company back in the day. He was probably the only corporate person in our family. But my grandfather, my dad's father, had a lighting store called Dallas Lighting Center. So they sold light fixtures, and it was up in North Dallas, so kind of near where we grew up, which was where all the growth was. So all the new homes, and so that business sold light fixtures into all the home builders, and then it had a retail store as well. And so I started working there. I mean, my first job was mowing yards, of course, like many.
How many employees when you were mowing yards did you have?
I had 4 or 5 at one point. Yeah. And I had a fun little experiment with my brother at one point too, which maybe we'll save that for another podcast.
Wow, that's impressive.
But I started mowing yards when I was, maybe 11, 12, whatever. And then I started working at the lighting center, and I started in the warehouse. And Mark will appreciate this. You guys will at some point too, but I'm incredibly OCD about a lot of things. And so one summer I organized the entire warehouse, and I don't know how many square feet it was at the time, because that's a distant memory, and I didn't have a concept of square footage back then, but it was a big warehouse. And I organized all the different lines and, fixtures. And I mean, I left there at the end of the summer. It was perfect. I came back like 3 months later, and all the guys that worked in the warehouse they didn't appreciate the OCD-ness of my work. And like, it was a disaster the next summer when I got back. So I was like, I'm not doing this again, Dad. So I ended up moving out to the retail floor and started selling light fixtures to customers that would walk in. And that was at probably 15 or 16. And for me, it was a competition. They had salespeople that worked there full time that, were much older than me, but I was kind of like, see how much, and I got a commission. So I was like, I sell $5,000 worth of light fixtures, I'm going to get paid. And so at the end of the day, I'd go, tally up all of my tickets and figure out how much commission I made. And, so I did that for a while. And then eventually I went to outside sales, calling on home builders out in the marketplace for a couple summers. And then, so that was kind of my early, so I've always worked. I mean, I have this philosophy around work that if you're doing something that you love, it's really not work. I mean, there's a lot of joy that comes in work if it's in balance. And, was thinking about my girls this past week, and just I was thinking about, like, so many people are striving for something in their life. And I think, the way I orient my workday is, God's gifted me with unique talents and abilities. And if I'm using those unique talents and abilities every day to sort of please Him and serve the world, then, like, whatever happens on the backside of that is all good. It doesn't matter how much money you make or how successful you are, or if you're doing that, then life is pretty good.
It's a wonderful concept, Scott, and frankly, the business you've built reflects so many of those values.
Yeah,
That's just terrific.
So it's that's kind of how I think about work. But so my mom was an interior designer, ran her own business for a lot of years, and so I sort of come by the entrepreneurial thing naturally, and that's why, when we talked earlier a little bit about we've both been advisors for a long time, and we've managed large client bases and developed a lot of client business and served a lot of clients over the years. But we really had this entrepreneurial gear to try to figure out what's the next turn on this really look like. Let's go back to y'all's story and how you guys, so y'all were at
AMG.
Thank you. Y'all were at AMG.
In fact, you called us when you were at AMG.
Our relationship dates back a little over 8 years.
Right.
You're right. It was the fall of 2000. Maybe it was the fall of 2016, so maybe a little under 8 years. Yeah.
And then I remember getting the call that you've switched the focus, the
Correct.
business model, right?
Well, so the story behind that is, so Sean and I and Rich Gill, our third founding partner, and Allison Saint-Pierre. So there's actually 4 founding partners of Wealth Partners Capital Group. We were together at AMG.
All 4 of you were there.
All 4 of us.
Okay.
We had approached AMG with a different model. So AMG's model, as I mentioned, was independent investment in larger firms. And frankly, the idea that they would remain independent was the core selling feature. So the idea that we would then help them grow either organically or inorganically really wasn't part of the construct. And what we saw happening in the space was the real opportunity was in the fragmentation. So many small firms looking for some kind of solution. It could be succession planning. It could be a platform for more growth. And we approached AMG and the board at that time with the idea that instead of making a one-off investment and leaving that firm alone, could we be a partner in growth? Could we create a strategic partnership where we helped our partner firms grow largely through M&A? And AMG's response was, we see the opportunity, we think it's a terrific idea, but frankly, it doesn't really coincide with the brand that we've built. So because we're sensitive to confusion in the marketplace, if you decided to do that, we'd be supportive, but you have to do it on your own. And so in the spring of 2017, we did it on our own.
Yeah, and you kind of think back on your life and your career, and it's kind of a culmination of all these different moments coming together and the experiences that we all had in our different careers, right? So our founding partner, Rich Gill, was one of the early employees at Focus, so he really had a good sense of how the model worked and how to build out a capability, especially if you're looking to expand via M&A. John obviously had terrific relationships and the ability to manage a team and set the vision and the strategy. Allison was terrific on the organizational side of just saying, okay, you guys have a lot of ideas. You need someone to actually bring them together and manage it effectively. We went out, we raised over the course of, call it 110 days, we raised, just under $100 million of capital, invested in 3 businesses. And it was probably not dissimilar to your experiences. It's like, okay, we're off and running, and we don't know where this is going to lead, but we had a vision, and we had this kind of entrepreneurial spirit, and we had investors that we had known for a long period of time that had entrusted us with their capital. And so there's nothing better than feeling desperate, right? Of saying, like, we are desperate to make this work, and we're desperate to be successful, because it's not just the people that gave us their capital, it's the firms that entrusted us and brought us into their ecosystem or their family, for lack of a better term. And so we had this unrelenting desire to just always do what is right and really kind of like I say, I use the term desperation because it really is. I mean, to build something and be part of, and be great partners.
So we ended up with six of the original team left. So
AMG.
Yep. It was Sean, Rich, Allison, myself, Dan Stanton, the son of the mentor I referenced earlier, and Jillian Rahm. And the six of us said, we're just going to lock arms. It was a burn the boats moment. There was no going back.
Yeah.
And
you had to make it work.
We had to make it work.
Yeah.
And enormous credit to our early partners. So Rick Bunicor and his team at MAI, Derek and Brian at EP, and the Keith Bloomfield at Forbes Wealth Management. Those were our three original partners, and those were the partners that we launched with. We had chatted with you all, and boy, were we impressed with the firm. As you recall, I came back a couple of times. And there was a size impediment just because we felt that firms, and we'll talk a little bit about this, but there's a critical AUM that's needed if you're going to engage in serial M&A.
Yep.
And the smallest of our partner firms at that point was about 2.9 billion, almost 3 billion in AUM. And that was about the cutoff where we felt, but much below that, it's hard to find all the things you need in a firm to really be a powerful acquirer of firms and to do it well and to do it successfully.
And so prior to our partnership, you guys had done 6 transactions, right? Six partnerships.
Partners. Exactly.
Yep.
6 partners. And we should talk a little bit about that, Scott. So we are intentionally very selective. We now have almost 30 people on our team. We are partners. We have 6 active partners, including True North. There were 6 prior, but Forbes Family Trust, the management team elected to sell a couple of years back to a international wealth management business based in London called Stanhope. So we had 5, and then with True North now 6 active partners. And I think it's fair to say, if we really opened the doors and didn't have the high threshold we have, we could probably have 24 active partners. There's so much interest in how RIA firms, good wealth management firms, can grow inorganically. But we do have a very high bar. And we have a very high bar because we feel very strongly that we want to be 120% partner to every partner we have. And so we're very conscious of things like, can we dedicate all the resources required? Channel conflict. Do we have unique value propositions around each of our partner firms? How do they think about the client? And we can talk about some of the things that made True North so attractive, but True North is a special and unique place, and there's very few firms that come with that kind of set of qualities that we look for.
So when you guys were at AMG, it was more of we're going to make an investment, and then we're just going to kind of leave you alone, and you had a pref, I'm guessing, on cash flow, and that was the model.
It was a revenue-based. It was exactly.
And did you guys ever do any investments in RIAs at AMG?
We did. So we, Sean and I and the team ran the wealth management investment arm. So we made, I think, 5 investments in 5 RIAs.
Under the old model.
In the old model.
Yep.
Yeah. In truth, it was a very different model.
Yeah.
And they're all terrific firms, and several of them are still at AMG as partners. But this is quite a different mission.
Yeah.
Once we launch.
So just touch on quickly, if you can, just the MAI, EP, and the others, and maybe touch on the success that you've had with each of them, or not in detail, but just high level.
Sure.
Just so that those listening have a sense for what you guys have been able to accomplish, because it's very impressive.
We had known the management team probably when they were at about $1.9 billion, $2 billion of AUM. Had the good fortune of investing in them in the summer of 2017. They were right around $4 billion. Today they're approaching $25 billion of AUM.
Wow.
Have done have formed probably 35 partnerships with other firms. They were originally basically in one geography, Cleveland, Ohio. It was the wealth management division for IMG, the talent agency business started by Mark McCormick. Today, they're in about 18 different regions, of which we found all of those locations for them, and partnered in, again, looking to find terrific leaders and great geographies and give them the resources to grow. So they were predominantly focused on the East Coast for many years. EP, we had known the management team probably at a similar point in their life cycle, about $2 billion of AUM. Made our investment when they were just under $3 billion. Today they're about approaching $25 billion of AUM and have established upwards of 20 regions. And really the idea is to go find a great management team, make an investment in those businesses, help them expand and grow their reach, and bring in advisors in great geographies, and give those advisors all the resources they need to grow, both organically and inorganically. And, truth be told, we've had an enormous amount of tailwinds. I mean, when we were investing in businesses at AMG, there really weren't that many models that were out there, right? The amount of capital that has flown into the wealth management space, both equity and on the debt side is, well in excess of anything that we could even foresee 7 or 8 years ago. So we've had, a lot of tailwinds from that perspective, but these firms have built just great businesses. And I think the one thing we're probably most proud about with the partnerships that we've had over the course of the last seven years or so, these firms in aggregate have done well over 100, acquisitions or partnerships, and we haven't had to unwind one of them. Yeah. And I think that, we spend, and I know this is so important to you guys, the cultural element of this is so important. And so there's an enormous amount of work done in the front end to make sure you're bringing the right people into the family, because it really is, it truly is a family.
Absolutely. Mark, why don't you talk a little bit about why we chose Wealth Partners in our process, or maybe talk a little bit about our process and the why behind it, and then how we got to a partnership with Wealth Partners.
Yeah, True North has always been about trying to make an impact on the industry, certainly pushing back on the broker type of approach of financial advisory services, and then really trying to eliminate conflicts of interest. And as I said before, create a firm that we would be proud of and want to be a client of. And we've always had a team approach. It's not an individual heroics that drive our organization. And I think we both share satisfaction of bringing people in from other captive environments where they have not experienced that. And for the first time, really appreciating what a healthy work-life balance looks like, and being part of a team and being valued for their unique skill sets. And then finding where they plug in to build something bigger. And so I think you and I have never been constrained by an idea of this is what the size of our firm and what it's going to look like for us personally, and see a huge opportunity like you guys did. I mean, the fragmented marketplace of RAs in general nationwide, and then the uniqueness of Texas and Southwest, of it being even further behind the curve, and just see an opportunity there to grow something of significance where we can be proud of, but we're giving an opportunity for others to come join us, help propagate the mission, lock arms, and really grow this thing. And I know you guys experience this because I've been interacting with your team all day long. You've got these bright young professionals, and our desire and hope, as y'all's is too, is to create a lifetime of progression, professional progression, an opportunity for them, and really kind of step back and just see the great things that they can do. That's incredibly energizing for us. So we have had the good fortune of growth. You and I have always been focused on organic growth because we feel that's the healthiest indicator of a firm. It's a positive feedback loop on we're doing something right, and then just trying to optimize our model. And I think we're at the point from a size perspective, and today we're a little south of $3.5 billion, where organic growth is going to be a challenge. And then also we've recognized that we need more talented individuals, and Texas is unique in that there isn't an RA in on every corner. And so it's hard to find individuals that know our business. There are a lot of people in financial services, but I think it's a fiduciarily driven, client first firm that is highly sophisticated. There aren't a lot out there. And so have recognized the need of inorganic growth. And We've done some in the past. I would say the first decade was learning what not to do, and then had some really good fortune over the last couple ones that we've done to really bring on talent that has taken our firm beyond where you and I can conceptualize. And so recognizing that need, and then, as I said before, we're stubborn and obstinate and like, how hard can this be? Well, turns out it's pretty hard. It's challenging. And as a business owner, we wear lots of different hats. And so we spent the last 2 years with various forms of iteration with various vendors or consultants trying to do this on our own. And finally just recognized that we needed dedicated, experienced professionals to help us on the M&A front. And that's where we turn to you guys. As you know, we ran a process. We hand selected who was going to get to participate and allowed our investment banker to add a couple more, just thinking, there's maybe somebody out there. I will tell you that
Were we hand selected or were we picked by the bank?
No, you were hand selected. So again, kind of this theme. We've been watching you from the sidelines as well, and the finalists in the process was not a surprise to us. And what I can say is that we've had, for viewers, we spent all day with your team, and it's an experience where every time I interact with your team, I'm like, oh yeah, this is even better than I thought. And just the level of professionalism, the level of experience, the culture, the humility that these very talented individuals on your team, now part of our team as well, and how engaged they are with us and interested in our culture, and excited about the opportunity. I feel really privileged, and I've told Scott this, and I've told my wife this. I am more energized about our business, certainly since we closed the deal a couple of weeks ago, and really through the whole process of seeing how you guys interacted, and when we would hit bumps in the road on negotiating various aspects legally, how you guys responded and really worked with us was completely refreshing for me. And so I am really excited. I mean, maybe more excited than, dare I say, when we first started the business. Maybe because I know much more. Back then we didn't know what we didn't know, and we were naive, but now we know. And I couldn't be more excited.
And I'd say, just for our listeners' benefit, like we consummated our transaction about 3 weeks ago.
Right.
So we're like on it now, running fast and furious. And y'all's team flew in today. We've got 8 or 9 or 10 folks from y'all's team here, and they're interacting with our team. And so we're getting started. So it's very exciting.
We're equally excited. And I mentioned earlier some of the threshold things that Sean and I and Rich and Allison think about when we think about a potential new partnership. And it won't surprise you that great people is the first, second, and third criteria. Mm-hmm. In addition to deep management bench, scalable operating infrastructure, a defined value proposition, a great culture, a sense of mission, and mission with a small m and mission with a large M, which comes through in spades, and great people. I'll say it again. I mean, it's business at the end of the day is all about partnering with people that you like and trust and really want to build something special. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I know we feel like we've got that. So it's very exciting for us.
Well, we do a podcast series specifically focused on entrepreneurs, and a lot of what we talk about is preparing for a liquidity event and life after. And, unfortunately, a lot of people sell their businesses or part of their businesses, and it's a mistake. We have gone through this process. We can look at the metrics, completely impressive history and experience. And I could say that it just gets better with every interaction. And, Scott and I know you were doing this. In fact, you kind of articulated it. I'm listening today as your team goes through the process and how they think about things, and I'm comparing it to how you and I were doing the last couple of transactions. And it's night and day, and it's kind of like, God, these guys are so professionals, so professional based on their experience, and have it so well thought out Plus, they're good people, and we feel privileged to be able to embark on this next adventure with you all.
Right back at you, and it doesn't surprise me that it only gets better because your first meeting was just with me.
That's right.
We usually try to start that way. We set the bar low.
That's right. Well, one of the things I think, that is important for those listening is, the opportunity that we see in the marketplace over the next decade. And you guys might know the statistic better than us, but I think that the number I keep hearing is like there's 1,000 new RIAs that start every year on the, Schwab, Fidelity, and other platforms. And then there's, 250 to 300 consolidating transactions every year. So the universe of RIAs is growing by whatever, 5, 6, 7, 800 RIAs every year. And I think I shared with y'all earlier, I met with a guy who calls on RIAs on Friday, and he said everybody's just trying to figure it out. So what would y'all say to a room full of RIAs who are just trying to figure it out, looking at the next 10 years and kind of these macro themes that are happening and the experience that you guys have had and Mark that we've had? How would y'all articulate the opportunity, and what would you impart to some of these RIAs?
Yeah, I think the one thing is that the client experience has to get better. And I mean that from, the tools that you're providing those clients from a financial planning perspective, the access to unique investment ideas, the interaction that they have with advisors, all of those things, because our belief is that the client is becoming more and more educated about the experience that they're getting. And so with that comes an enormous amount of investment in your own firm. So it means, as you guys know, these are high cash flow producing businesses. And it's hard because you're reallocating those dollars from your pocket back into the business to say, we need to hire more client service people, we need to hire more investment people. So our approach is there are people that are going to do that. They're going to make that investment, but it's a very, very small subset. I think many of them will look at it and say, you know what, I have the opportunity to join a great firm with a terrific culture, with a growth plan that's unique and differentiated, given the opportunity that we see. They're going to continue to invest in the team from a client perspective and an investment perspective. And I can do all of that while never changing and hopefully enhancing my economic outcome in the future. So we look at it and say, if you had the opportunity to get the best of both worlds, which is a great client experience and a great firm to service those relationships, matched with a great economic outcome, with terrific principles and a terrific culture, it's hard to say no to that. And our sense is that what you all have built and what you've allowed us to become part of today, we just have to spread the word because it's a very, very unique culture, and we have a high degree of confidence, just based on who you are and what you've built and the team, that there's a large universe of prospective partners for us out there.
It's interesting that the way you characterize it, because it was almost exactly the conversation I had with this gentleman on Friday. And one of the things we talked about was the fact that, 10 or 15 years ago, if you were an RIA, that was unique. Well, if there's 1,000 new RIAs being created every year, it's not terribly unique anymore. So you can't just rely on the uniqueness of being an RIA. You have to enhance the client experience. You have to provide an alternative investment solution for a high net worth client. And then you have to reinvest in the business and
in yourself. I mean, from a professional standpoint.
Absolutely. And I think so many people, leave a captive environment where it's a cash flow, it's how do I maximize my cash flow and how much can I take home? And you have to change that thinking. You have to be willing to really make less from a cash flow perspective in the short run and reinvest that capital back in the business. And it takes a long time.
Yes, it does.
One of the things that Mark and I we learned early on, and I would say it was Mark's leadership that provided the direction, was that, we had to pay ourselves less and just continually invest capital. And, I had come from a little bit more of a brokerage, sell something, get paid environment. And so I was more used to the cash flow. And so in the early days, it was hard because you're kind of looking at the revenue flowing through and you're like, oh, that number down there looks pretty good. But then you're like, well, we need to really go hire this person and invest in this piece of technology. And so I think a lot of advisors don't realize when they go out that they see the headline number. They see that, oh, you're going to get a 90% payout, or you're going to get a 95% payout, or depending on whatever platform you're on. They don't realize that it ain't 95%. It ain't even 90%. It's probably not even 70% or 65%.
Yep.
You know, it's probably closer to where you were when you were captive, but then the firm was doing everything for you.
Well, and the good news about today, as you point out, Scott, is that for that advisor who has a highly entrepreneurial drive, wants to be client-centric, doesn't want to be beholden to in-house product or work for a big firm, there are a lot of options to get all those things and still be just an advisor and not have to worry about
That's right.
the hassle of all the other things you think about when you run your own business. And that's the mission. That's the mission we're on.
I think one of the things we're so excited about is we've learned, and we have 52, 53 people today. We've learned that we can't do this by ourselves. And we learned it, you know, it probably took us a little while to learn that, but you know, the power of a team, a truly aligned team where everybody's pulling together and working really hard is really exciting. And it's a ton of fun and it's exhilarating instead of being exhausting. You know, if you're by yourself and you're slogging away and you're by yourself, it gets hard, it gets lonely. And, you know, the power of a team is incredible when you've got a healthy culture and, you know, everybody's really figured out, you know, kind of where their role is on the team, and you lock arms and go after it together, just like you guys have done with Wealth Partners.
That sense of culture and mission, which you reference, is really critical. People want to understand what they're joining and make sure it's aligned with their own sense of personal values and client service. And you know, well, I'll circle back to something Sean said. We're proud to be your partner. You guys have built exactly that very special place to live and to work, and we're excited to move forward.
Great.
Thank
All right,
you.
Sean, you gave a great answer. I'm going to go to Mark. Got 100 RIAs in the audience. What would you say?
I would say, to your point, you know, more RAs are getting created every single day. And so how are you going to differentiate? I mean, the market is moving incredibly quickly, and something that's different, that's positive, is the technology is better, the access to investments are better, but trying to get your arms around that is a lot more difficult. I think about, if we're going to be a significant player in this marketplace, True North is going to have to triple or quadruple in size, right? And we're a large RIA. We have professional planners, et cetera. That costs a lot of money. And so I think you have to continue to grow. As I said, there's a challenge with talent, retaining and keeping talent. So you have to have enough size to be able to offer professional development and a career path. And so I think those things are different. And then lastly, I would say, I think the next 10 years are going to look very different than the last 20 years. So you talked about the tailwinds that you've experienced in this marketplace, or just even in the capital markets. I mean, we go back far enough to remember before it was QE.
Sadly.
Sadly. And before, you know, the monetary policy was artificial. And I think back about my first investing experiences in the 70s, and I was a snot-nosed kid that didn't know anything. That was a hard time. It's a hard time for clients. And I think the sands are shifting, and I think we've got a different paradigm where we don't have these macro global economic tailwinds behind us. They're in front of us now. And so how do we serve and protect our clients in that environment? And you have to be more sophisticated. So that's the thing I would talk about, is I think there are firms that you can align yourself with, to the point that you have alignment on what it means for client service. Missionally, you're aligned, that you can thrive, grow, and flourish, and also add to the future growth trajectory. And people don't know us, but we want bright people that are going to lock arms to help us. It's not just you and me. It's about the organization, and fortunately, the experience working with professionals that, as I said, are brighter, smarter, more accomplished, and are additive to what True North's mission is. What would you say?
Well, I was going to ask John.
Okay.
But
sorry.
You know, I just go back to this concept of the power of a team, and then this idea of unique ability, which, unique ability is a concept that Dan Sullivan, strategic coach, talks about a lot. And, it's this idea that we're all gifted with something. And then we end up spending a lot of our days doing a lot of things that we're really not gifted at, just because of capacity. It has to get done. And so, in a larger organization, you can allow people to specialize in the thing that they're really good at. And then if they can do that all day long, every day, they're going to be energized by that work. And then you have an organization that feels that way, like the client is going to have a great experience. And so that's really how I think about, what we're going to do together is let's find great people. Let's figure out what really gets them excited. Let's figure out how to, put that role around them, and then staff and hire or use resources from the existing organization to fill in the places that are not super interesting to them. And then let's go create something great together.
That's our mission. That's our mission with you.
All right, John, last word.
Scott, you mentioned it. It's a fragmented industry, getting more fragmented and getting larger, right? Because it is taking a larger share of the individual wealth management dollars, right, away from brokerage firms and large banks, et cetera. The opportunity for small RIAs to be able to deliver for clients, for themselves, for colleagues, and do what they want to do is only going to get better over the course of the next decade as firms like True North get larger and are more eager to find people who share the sense of mission and share the sense of clients. So if I were looking back 5 or 7 years from now, I would expect that that True North will have become a much larger firm, will have delivered on its mission of reaching more people in more places with the capability sets that you offer, will have increased the capabilities that the firm has or deepen them, and will be a super attractive place for someone to work who's thinking, I want all the good and I like to avoid some of the bad of running my own firm. And if we can deliver on that, we've continued to build on what is a very special firm.
Well, thank you guys. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, this was fun.
Thank you.
Good chat. Thank y'all.
Thank you.